He was wiping the lobby floor, a worn-out mop in his hand, when Adam glanced up and caught the eye of a busy executive rushing past. The man barely noticed him, lost in his thoughts. Adam sighed, the soft squeaking of the mop echoing in the vast, empty space. He had been here for 3 years, cleaning up after the busy lives of others, playing an invisible role in a world that felt so much bigger than him. As the evening lights glimmered off the polished floor, hope flickered in Adam's heart. He had dreams of rise and change, dreams that somehow seemed far away, more like stars in the sky than something within reach. But right now, he was just the janitor, the guy everyone passed without a second glance. One day, as he pushed his mop along, he overheard a conversation. A group of managers gathered near the elevators, voices rising with urgency. They were discussing the company's troubles, declining profits, low morale, and a lack of direction. Adam could hear the frustration in their voices. Something inside him stirred, one manager exclaimed. Adam couldn't shake off those words. They echoed in his mind long after the meeting broke up. What if he could be that voice? At first, the thought felt silly. He spent his days cleaning up spills and emptying trash cans, but as days turned into weeks, that thought turned into a spark, then a fire. Maybe he could offer ideas that mattered, maybe he could contribute more than just labor. It started slowly. He began staying later, getting to know the staff better during his rounds. The receptionists, who always had smiles when he came by, started to chat with him. He listened to their concerns about job security, long hours, and feeling unheard. Their worries reminded him of times he felt overlooked, neglected like a crumpled piece of paper tossed in a bin. His nights became a mix of scrubbing floors and gathering ideas. He'd jot down thoughts on scraps of paper, each note a collection of dreams and frustrations. This wasn't just about a job, it was about the people who built their lives around this company. He wanted change, not for himself alone, but for everyone. A few weeks later, a poster appeared in the break room. It read, Adam's heart raced. For the first time, the company was inviting employees to vote for the leader from within. Maybe he could run. It felt like a crazy dream. He thought about it long and hard. The notion of standing in front of people who usually saw him as just the janitor was terrifying, but he could not shake the fire igniting in his belly. People needed hope, and perhaps he could be the person to give it to them. With shaking hands, he signed up for the election. The next day, he stood at the podium, looking out at a crowd that felt like a sea of faces. A mix of disbelief, curiosity, and a hint of support. His voice shook as he spoke, but he poured everything he had into those words. I've cleaned this building for years. I've seen what we do well and what we can improve. Afterward, he was surprised to see a few colleagues approach him, clapping him on the back, offering encouragement. Words of kindness warmed him, and he felt a small flame of courage grow within. He kept going, meeting as many employees as he could, listening to their stories. Each conversation solidified his belief that change was possible. He reminded himself day after day that he wasn't just some janitor in the shadows anymore, he was a voice for them. As voting day approached, tension filled the air. Colleagues who used to ignore him now engaged him in conversation. Fingers pointed to Adam's name on the ballot's uncertainty mixed with unease. Those whispers echoed through the halls. Adam's heart raced, but his resolve grew stronger. He thought about the people who had been left unheard. He thought about them when doubt crept in during sleepless nights. He visualized change, and each time he did, a sense of empowerment washed over him. Finally, the day came. The conference room where votes were cast buzzed with a mix of nervous energy and anticipation. Employees filed in, clutching their ballots. Adam stood in the back, anxiety bubbling in his stomach. But he also recalled the passion he had felt when listening to their stories. He realized that maybe being a janitor had given him the very insight they needed. He knew the struggles of every department, he understood the weight of their burdens, and he cared. The votes were counted, and silence fell over the room. People held their breath, anticipation thick in the air. We have a winner, the announcer said, a note of disbelief in his voice. Shock waves rippled through the crowd, gasps, murmurs, and then applause filled the air, a sound that felt unbelievable. People were standing, first slowly, then all at once clapping, cheering. Adam stood frozen, a whirlwind of emotions swirling inside him. Tears pricked at his eyes, not from sadness, but from overwhelming joy and relief. He had done it. The dreams he held close were no longer just dreams, they were now reality. For weeks, Adam struggled to find his footing as president. The learning curve was steep and mistakes were made along the way. Sometimes he fell back into the insecurities of being the janitor who had dared to dream too big. Surrounded by seasoned professionals, doubt whispered in his mind, asking if he was truly worthy of the position he had fought for. But he faced those fears head-on. Each day he reminded himself that he did not walk into this role alone. He remained in close contact with the employees, encouraging open dialogue. He engaged them in decision-making and brainstorming sessions, making sure their voices were not just heard but celebrated. Months passed and change began to ripple through the company. Morale improved as employees saw their suggestions brought to life. The once busy hallways were now filled with laughter and collaboration. New projects blossomed as departments started working together. Adam created a culture where everyone felt they mattered, where every opinion had weight. Gradually, his leadership transitioned from cautious uncertainty to something powerful. He was not just Adam the janitor, he was Adam the president, connector, a force for good. He tackled problems with vigor, putting his heart into ensuring everyone felt valued. In the frenzy of deadlines and meetings, he never lost sight of the journey it took to get there. Standing in the lobby once again, he looked down at the floor he used to mop every night. The same floor now glimmered under the bright lights, a reminder of beginnings, resilience, and transformation. The road ahead was still full of challenges, but Adam knew one thing for sure: he was not alone. Together, they would wipe away the dust of neglect and foster a space of hope, teamwork, and dreams realized. And every time he felt overwhelmed, he reminded himself why he ran: for the people, for their stories, and for the change that started with a simple act of believing one could be more than anyone ever expected. The story of Adam, the janitor turned president, became a powerful tale of belief and action, inspiring others to rise above their circumstances and create change in their own worlds. Because within every unexpected hero lies a source of strength, and sometimes it all begins with pushing a mop across the floor. He was down on his knees, scrubbing the lobby floor when the unexpected happened. A glass door swung open and a group of executives stepped inside, their laughter echoing through the vast, polished space. Adam looked up, his mop frozen mid-swipe. The sight of their tailored suits and polished shoes sent a wave of shame washing over him. He was just the janitor, the unseen man behind the shining glass. As they strolled past him, immersed in their own conversation, one of them glanced down, barely meeting his eyes. It was a fleeting moment, but it hit Adam hard. He felt invisible, trapped in a world that saw him as nothing more than a soul meant to clean up after the important people. But that day, something changed deep inside him. He wiped the floor with more force, as if scrubbing away the weight of the world. As the mop glided across the surface, he let his mind wander. Thoughts swirled through his head, thoughts about the company, about what it could be. He felt a flicker of anger, of determination. This company needed a leader who cared, someone who knew what it meant to struggle. Days turned into weeks, and with every shift, Adam's dreams began to take shape. He listened to the whispers floating around the break room. The executives were worried. Morale was sinking and profits were slipping away like water running through their fingers. Employees felt unheard, undervalued. He remembered one of the receptionists saying, her voice edged with frustration. What if? That question lingered in Adam's mind, igniting something inside him. He had been keeping his own ideas bottled up, afraid to voice them, but he was done being quiet. It was time to step into the light to make himself heard. One chilly evening after everyone had left, Adam sat alone in the empty break room, laying out his thoughts on paper. He scribbled down everything: the issues, the struggles, the hopes. This wasn't just about making the company better, it was about the lives of the people like him who had dreams trapped behind sweeping mops and shining floors. Days passed and he gathered the courage to approach his coworkers. He started small, chatting while he worked, asking them about their concerns. Each conversation sharpened his ideas, carving out a clearer vision of what he wanted to say. The moment of reckoning came when an announcement crackled over the intercom. A company-wide meeting was scheduled for the next week, and everyone was invited to discuss the upcoming elections for new leadership. Adam's heart raced. This was his chance. Standing at the back of the room on the day of the meeting, Adam felt a mix of excitement and dread. His heart hammered in his chest as he listened to the familiar voices of managers talking about the state of affairs, casting blame on each other while the employees sat in silence. Then came that moment, the moment he knew he would either sink or swim. As the crowd quieted, he stepped forward. The air became charged with energy, anticipation hanging heavy. I have an idea, he said, his voice shaking. What if we listen to the people doing the work? They know what's wrong. Shock rippled through the audience. He could see eyebrows raise and smirks shared among the executives, but he pushed through the rising tension. I may be just a janitor, but I've been here long enough to see the heart of this company. His heart sounded like a drum. He was terrified yet exhilarated. The silence hung around him like a thick fog, but then he saw her. A receptionist he often chatted with stood up, her voice steady. He's right, we have ideas. Slowly, one by one, others began to rise. The tension in the room shifted, opening up spaces for a real conversation. Adam felt a rush of hope flashing through him. With the seeds of support growing in the room, the meeting ended, leaving everyone buzzing with new energy. Adam spent the following days talking with each department, listening intently. He was no longer just scrubbing floors, he was building connections, forming alliances, and gathering a coalition of voices. When the election date was set, he gathered himself in front of a mirror. You can do this, he whispered. His reflection stared back, a mixture of doubt and determination. He could be more than a janitor, he could lead. So he signed up to run for president. The next few weeks turned into a whirlwind of campaign efforts he'd only seen on TV. As voting day approached, a wave of panic struck. What if they laughed? What if they didn't take him seriously? But every time doubt crept in, he remembered the late nights spent listening to his coworkers' stories, their dreams echoing in his ears. On that fateful day, Adam stood in front of the crowd once again, each face staring back at him with a mix of hopefulness and skepticism. He felt the weight of every cleaned floor and every discarded piece of trash. "I'm not just running for myself," he said, his voice steady. "I'm here for all of you. Together we can make this place better." A murmur rolled through the crowd, but he pressed on. "It's not about titles, it's about teamwork." He finished, his chest tightening as he held his breath. The crowd began to clap a tentative, unsure applause. His heart soared but also sank. Could they truly see him as a leader? Weeks flew by, and the board convened to count votes. Adam sat in the back of the room, surrounded by the same executives who had once looked right through him. The air was thick with anticipation. Nerves tightened in his stomach like a coiled spring. When the board chair stood up, everyone quieted in an instant. "Today we've reached a decision," she announced, and in that singular moment, Adam's heart raced wildly. He could barely breathe. "The new president of our company is..." Silence fell before a wave of jubilation erupted. The crowd was on their feet, cheers and applause ringing in his ears. He stood there frozen, tears welling in his eyes. The janitor Adam, his name now echoed in a room that once disregarded him. Weeks passed, and the transition was far from easy. Adam was still learning, still adapting to the powerful role he'd taken upon himself. Doubts surfaced like dark clouds every now and then, but he remembered those voices, the people who believed he could lead. Each day he held meetings, encouraged open dialogue, and valued every single opinion. He connected departments that had been siloed away, fostering an environment where ideas could flourish like wildflowers in spring. The change was palpable, excitement buzzed in the hallways. Months into his presidency, he walked the hallways every day, a sense of purpose propelling him forward. He still had moments when he felt that familiar fear creep in, the voice that whispered he didn't belong. But every time it did, he reminded himself of the behind-the-scenes battle that led him here, a journey painted with late-night scrubs and whispered dreams. Then came the day when the company posted its annual report. Profits had surged and employee engagement shot up. As Adam stood in front of the board reviewing the results, he felt that familiar pang of pride, of relief. All the late nights, all the struggles had paid off. He looked around the room at the faces that once seemed so distant, now glowing with respect and recognition. Adam didn't just change a company, he transformed lives, his own included. Standing in the lobby, he ran his fingers along the wall, a subtle reminder of where he started. The polished floors sparkled under the vibrant lights, capturing a future filled with promise. Here, dreams weren't just dust mopped away, they truly could find a home. Adam was the proof, not just that anyone could rise, but that transformation lives in every unseen corner, waiting only for someone brave enough to lift the broom and sweep away doubt. He was mopping the lobby floor when the sound of high heels clicked sharply against the tile, breaking the silence. Adam looked up to see the vice president of operations striding toward him, her confident presence filling the space. For a moment he felt like a ghost in a haunted house, invisible among the bustling life around him. As she passed, the light from the chandelier caught the polished brass of her nameplate, illuminating the glimmer of power it represented. Adam couldn't help but let his gaze drift to her shoes designer heels that walked confidently through the halls of authority. Meanwhile, his worn-out sneakers clung to the cold, hard floor. A wave of bitterness rose in him like bile. Why was he down here scrubbing floors while she occupied the heights of success? The thought stung, but he pushed past it. Deep down, Adam was a dreamer, and his dreams felt impossibly distant. Days turned into months, and with every mop stroke, he caught snippets of conversations among the elite, the board meetings, the strategies, the ideas. Whispers of hope and ambitions echoed in the air, each one a reminder of everything he wasn't. But then, one rainy afternoon, everything changed. As he was pushing his mop across the floor, he overheard a conversation between two executives. Their voices carried through the lobby, laced with urgency and frustration. "We're losing our edge," one said, rubbing his temples. "The team feels disconnected." Adam's heart raced. He felt fired up, not just out of anger, but a flicker of something else, a spark of opportunity. What if he could do something about it? He was just the janitor, but voices rise from the unlikeliest places. Maybe he had a unique perspective, a way to bridge the divide. That night, Adam sat at his kitchen table with a pen and some paper, his heart racing. He started jotting down ideas, thoughts that had been percolating in his mind for far too long. What if the employees were part of the solution? What if he could present a case for change? As he wrote, a flutter of hope blossomed in his chest. His casual conversations with staff grew deeper. Alfred from IT, Sarah from HR, even the newly hired receptionist poured out their frustrations. A movie began to play in his mind, a narrative that combined his and their struggles. Each person had a story, and he wanted to collect those stories like a painter collecting colors for a masterpiece. Weeks turned into a wave of excitement. Adam's resolve solidified. News spread around the office when the company announced an upcoming leadership election. For once, the voices of the employees would matter. He felt a surge of conviction wash over him. "I could run," he whispered to himself, a wild thought that pushed aside the doubts. When he signed up to run for president, a tremor of fear and exhilaration coursed through him. Every morning felt heavier, every look from his coworkers felt filled with curiosity and unease. The whispers floated through the office like a sweet, dizzying melody. The campaign began, a whirlwind of making posters, speaking with colleagues, and drafting a vision. In his mind, it wasn't just a catchy phrase, it was a mantra, a promise that each voice mattered, that they could uplift each other. As the day of the election drew closer, uncertainty seeped into Adam's mind like shadows creeping across the floor. What if he was wasting everyone's time? What if they laughed at him? He banished those thoughts every time they threatened to take root. He couldn't back down now, not when he felt so connected to everyone around him. On the day of the election, his heart thumped loudly in his chest like a drum. He stood in front of a crowded sea of faces reflecting doubt and curiosity. The executives sat at the front, their expectation palpable and intimidating. With a deep breath, he stepped toward the microphone. "Thank you for letting me speak today." He paused. "I know what it feels like to be overlooked, to feel invisible. But if I can rise up, so can you." The room fell silent. He could see the skepticism etched across some faces, but hope crackled in others. Adam pressed on, sharing stories of employees who had shared their struggles with him, stories of burnout, frustration, and dreams stifled under the weight of indifference. Each tale spun a tapestry of voices that had been silenced for too long. As he finished, applause filled the room, but it was hesitant, yet he felt it, a shift in energy. It was small but tangible. A light flickered in the back of his mind, one he couldn't ignore. After that, the days flew by. The company atmosphere shifted slowly but surely. People began to talk, to believe. Adam spent time ensuring everyone felt heard, that their voices mattered. As he neared the end of the campaign, he realized he wasn't just running for himself. He was running for everyone who felt overlooked, who felt trapped. Voting day arrived with its own tension. Employees filed into the makeshift voting booth, their faces a mix of excitement, uncertainty, and hope. Each ballot held dreams, both for them and for Adam. The votes were sealed, counted, and reviewed, but nothing could prepare him for the results. Adam stood in the conference room, surrounded by board members. The noise in the room felt electric yet claustrophobic. The room hushed as the chairman cleared her throat. "The board has made a decision," she announced, her voice echoing against the stark walls, "and I'm pleased to announce that the new president of the company is..." The room erupted into applause, but he stood frozen for a heartbeat, disbelief consuming him. People shouted his name, colleagues he wiped floors behind were now cheering for him. That moment when reality sank felt surreal. He looked at the people's faces, joy, excitement, trust. In an instant, he understood the weight of what he had become. The first weeks in office were a whirlwind. Doubt shadowed his every decision. Whispers of "he's just a janitor" echoed in the back of his mind. But as he dove deeper into the role, he discovered a passion he never knew he had. The people around him began to rally, and he found allies where he least expected them. He organized contests for ideas, set up forums for feedback, and opened channels of communication that had long been neglected. The organization began to hum with energy. Employees who had once felt like shadows started to shine, sharing ideas that sparked innovation and creativity. But success didn't come without challenges. There were hours spent in meetings, tensions over budgets, and moments of doubt. Adam struggled, wrestling with what it meant to lead. Still, he hung on to the shared stories that fueled his fire. Every struggle became a lesson, every setback a challenge to overcome. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. As Adam walked the hallways, he felt a sense of camaraderie with the employees unlike anything he had ever known. They shared laughter, frustrations, and victories. This wasn't just a workplace. It felt like a community of vibrant tapestry woven with diversity and strength. Then one day, amidst the chaos of a busy week, he found himself staring at the polished floor beneath his feet, the very floor he once scrubbed. Memories flooded back of late nights and quiet hopes, of the whispered dreams that once felt unattainable. In that moment, he understood that his journey was far from just a personal victory. He wasn't just a janitor turned president. He was a symbol of hope for all who dared to dream beyond their circumstances. The company thrived, engaging employees turned into investors of their work, believing in the potential that lay within them and their contributions. The energy shifted, profits soared, but more importantly, the spirit of the place transformed. Looking back at the decision that had changed everything, Adam reflected on how fear and doubt had battled his desires. He thought of the executives who had once brushed past him, oblivious to the dreams that simmered beneath the surface. He had believed in their own strengths, but overlooked the quiet power of the individual, the janitor's eye for detail, the janitor's understanding of the heartbeat of the company. In those hallways, under the glow of the chandeliers, they had created something special. Together, they had learned to rise. His story became one of transformation, resilience, and teamwork, an echo of hope that reached beyond the walls of the office, inspiring others to believe in change, to nurture their dreams, and to lift each other higher. The janitor wasn't just a title. It was a reminder that every voice matters, that change often emerges from the most unexpected places. And as he stood there, Adam smiled, the janitor turned president, because he knew they had all risen together. In this journey, every corner swept, every story shared, and every heart lifted played its part in the beautiful symphony of what they had created. They were a community united, and Adam had become exactly what he had dreamed he could be. Together, they transformed his dreams into reality. He was down on his knees, mopping the lobby floor when the unexpected happened. The glass door swung open, and a group of executives walked in, their laughter echoing off the high ceilings. Adam looked up, his heart sinking as he caught a glimpse of their sharp suits and polished shoes. It was such a stark contrast to his work uniform, a simple shirt and faded pants. He felt small, invisible, as if he were a shadow blending into the dull tile beneath him. The executives moved like a river, flowing past him with no acknowledgement. As they continued their conversation, Adam heard snippets. "We need to boost profits," one said, his voice filled with frustration. The words lingered in the air, heavy with meaning. Adam's heart raced. He felt a deep stirring, a flicker of anger and determination. Maybe they needed someone who knew the ground level, someone who understood the pulse of the company. He returned to his scrubbing, each stroke of the mop a reminder of how far he felt from their world. Yet instead of despair, a new thought began to form in his mind. What if he could be a voice for change? What if the janitor became more than just a figure in the background? Days turned into weeks, and Adam's curiosity morphed into resolve. He started to listen more closely during his shifts. Conversations swirled around him like gusts of wind, filled with complaints and ideas. The frustrated receptionist, the overworked IT staff, all shared their feelings of being lost in the corporate machine. "We need someone to speak up," one of the janitors said during a break. That conversation lit a fire in Adam's heart. Perhaps he was meant to be that someone. The quiet corners of the office, he started jotting down his thoughts, ideas for improving the workplace, opinions that had long been buried under layers of neglect. One day, as he put his pen down, he felt emboldened. Maybe he could make a difference. The company was announcing leadership elections soon, and for the first time the thought of running crossed his mind. The very idea made his stomach turn, but he did it anyway. He signed up, breathing life into a wild dream that had taken root in his heart. On the day of the announcement, Adam stood in front of a group of his coworkers. The room was filled with an air of skepticism and curiosity. He felt the weight of their eyes, some met with doubt, others with unspoken support. "I know I'm not who you expected to see standing here," he began, his voice shaking slightly, "but I believe we need to shake things up." Silence blanketed the room. He pressed on, "I may be just the janitor, but I understand every corner of this place." As he spoke, Adam saw a glimmer of recognition flash in a few eyes. A few heads bobbed tentatively in agreement. He could feel the energy shifting, building into something alive. The whispers of doubt faded just a little, replaced by a sense of possibility. It felt surreal, like he was standing on the edge of a cliff, ready to leap into the unknown. The weeks flew by in a blur of campaigning, and Adam poured his heart into the effort. He created posters, shared his vision in the break room, gathered signatures of support from coworkers. The slogan, "Together We Rise," became a rallying cry, echoing through the office hallways. But each night, as he lay in bed, doubt washed over him. How could a janitor lead a company? What did he know about budgets and strategies? Those thoughts crept in like an unwelcome guest, yet somehow he pushed through. He reminded himself of the conversations, of the hopes and frustrations that had fueled him. They were worth fighting for. Finally, the day of the election arrived, and the atmosphere felt electric. He stood in front of the crowd, his heart racing. As he began to speak, he noticed some familiar faces. Colleagues who had cheered him on began to clap, and the sound washed over him like a warm wave. "If elected, I promise to listen to every department, to every person. Together we will create a culture where every voice matters," he said, summoning every ounce of passion in his soul. The audience shifted, uncertainty flickering like candlelight. Some were unsure, still doubting, but others nodded, hope igniting in their eyes. His speech ended, and the applause was hesitant but warm. It was enough to keep the fire alive within him. As the voting day approached, anticipation buzzed in the air. Colleagues whispered about him, speculating whether a janitor could really lead. Each comment stoked the flames of his resolve. Adam reminded himself that change didn't come from suits and titles, but from people who cared. When the votes were finally counted, Adam gathered beside the executives, anxiety tightening in his chest. The room felt thick with expectation. As the chairman announced the results, Adam could hardly breathe. He stood there, frozen for a moment, his heart racing. The room erupted. Applause surrounded him, echoing off the walls. He felt as if he'd stepped into a different universe, the janitor now recognized as a leader. Colleagues rushed toward him, shaking his hand, patting his back. This was everything he dreamed of, yet it felt surreal. The challenges began immediately. Adam found himself navigating decision-making, budgets, and meetings that stretched long into the evening. It was exhilarating and terrifying all at once. Doubts nagged at him, reminding him of who he used to be. He often thought, but the support of his coworkers bolstered him. They believed in him, and that belief fueled his courage. Months slipped by, each bringing its own set of challenges. Adam discovered that the louder he listened, the better decisions he could make. He created open forums and feedback sessions, encouraging everyone to speak up. Slowly, the once stale atmosphere began to bubble with fresh ideas. A film of camaraderie settled over the company. Employees who had once felt disconnected began to share smiles and stories, contributing to the larger vision. Projects took off and the energy was infectious. Profits climbed and Adam felt a sense of pride that he had always longed for. But just when things began to feel comfortable, a crisis hit. The company faced a major setback. Unexpected layoffs loomed over them, and anxiety gripped the air. Adam felt the weight of it all pressing down like a heavy fog. He gathered his team, heart pounding as he shared what lay ahead. In those moments, he was reminded of his time as a janitor when he walked alongside employees' struggles, the loneliness, the fear, the hopelessness. "We'll get through this together," he reassured them. As days turned into frantic weeks, Adam leaned into his instincts. He encouraged brainstorming sessions, brought everyone into the fold, amplifying their ideas. They created a plan together, a strategy built on hope and collaboration. Trust bubbled back to the surface and a collective spirit emerged, and then it happened. The layoffs were managed and the tension slowly eased. The company began to turn around, with growth burgeoning in unexpected areas. As he looked around the room, he saw renewed energy, a shared belief. It was cathartic to witness. Standing in that same lobby where he had once mopped the floors, he reflected on how far he'd come. He still felt the echoes of sweeping brushes against the tiles, but now it was different. He understood the power of voices coming together, the magic of teamwork, and the strength found in vulnerability. In a company that had once felt so vast and intimidating, Adam discovered a close-knit family of people striving and dreaming side by side. And as he asked for suggestions on improving office dynamics, he found that laughter rang louder than tensions ever had. They learned to celebrate each small victory together. Looking back at that day when he stood at the podium, he realized something profound. The struggle between a janitor and a president was less about titles and more about heart. Every person's path was valid, and everyone had a role to play in shaping the future. The story of Adam became something more than just a journey of personal triumph. It morphed into a narrative that wove through the fabric of the entire company. It reminded everyone that leadership isn't about hierarchy, it's about compassion and understanding. As he moved through the hallways, Adam smiled at the connections he'd forged. The janitor had become a symbol of hope, of resilience, and of change. In that moment, he was no longer just a figure mopping floors. He was a catalyst for transformation, and the spark of leadership lived within every one of them. In the end, Adam's journey became a testament to the idea that sometimes the best leaders rise from unexpected places, like from the quiet rhythm of a mop against the floor. And as they built the future of the company together, they blossomed into something extraordinary, uplifted by the belief that everyone truly matters. He was down on his knees, wiping the lobby floor, when the unexpected happened. The door swung open and a group of sleekly dressed executives strode in, their laughter echoing through the spacious hall. Adam glanced up, his mop hovering mid-swipe as he caught sight of their tailored suits and polished shoes. In that moment, he felt like nothing more than a mere shadow, a ghost in a world that moved too fast for him to be noticed. As they passed, one of the executives stalled and confident turned slightly, raising an eyebrow before returning to his conversation. Adam's heart sank. Here he was, the janitor, mopping away in silence while these men held the reins of power. It stung, but deep down it ignited something fierce inside him. Maybe it was time to change that narrative. Perhaps he could be more than invisible. In the weeks that followed, Adam's resolve solidified. He began to listen closely to the conversations around him. With each swipe of the mop, he absorbed the frustrations, the complaints, the dreams of the employees who worked under the weight of indifference. "We need a leader who understands us," one employee murmured in the break room. Those words echoed in his heart. What if he could be that voice? The idea thrilled and terrified him. After all, he spent his days cleaning floors, not leading meetings. Yet the more he mulled it over, the more it felt like an opportunity, a chance to reshape his future. And so began his quiet journey, a quest sparked by the moments that slipped unnoticed through corporate corridors. Adam latched onto the thought, pouring his evenings into jotting down ideas on scraps of paper. He envisioned a workplace where everyone felt valued, where communication flowed freely, where no one felt small. Every note he wrote, every idea he mapped out was a thread in a larger tapestry he wanted to weave. Then an announcement came, a company-wide election for new leadership. The air was electric with possibility, and for the first time, Adam felt like he could see a glimmer of his dreams taking shape. He gathered the courage and signed up to run. That first day of campaigning felt surreal. Standing in front of his coworkers, he felt a mix of hope and fear churning in his stomach. They were all eyes and ears, some curious, others skeptical. He took a breath. "I'm not just the janitor," he started, each word fueled by the stories he'd heard. "I see the struggles and the potential in this room." The silence hung heavy as he spoke, but slowly he saw nods and a flicker of recognition emerged across faces. It was as if a door had cracked open just wide enough to let in a sliver of hope. In the following weeks, he poured his energy into the campaign. He made posters, put up flyers, and engaged in conversations that stretched long into the night. Every chat was an exchange of stories and ideas that solidified his vision. "Together we rise" became his mantra, echoing down the hallways and sparking excitement among employees. But with each passing day, doubt wrapped around him like an old coat. Could a janitor really lead? What did he know about budgets, strategy, or even making big decisions? Those thoughts took root, whispering insecurities in quiet moments. Yet every time fear nudged him, he remembered those first conversations, the employees who trusted him to be their voice. The night before the election, Adam lay in bed staring at the ceiling. His heart raced as he thought about what was to come. He practiced his speech in his head, pouring his passion into every word. He envisioned the faces of people he had met, their hopes hanging in the balance. On election day, he stood before the crowd again, his heart pounding in his chest like a war drum. "I'm here because I believe in us. I believe we can create a culture where every voice matters. Together we can transform this company," he said, channeling every ounce of energy he had. The applause that followed was faint but warm, a flicker in a darkness he had often felt. But it didn't matter. Adam felt like he had planted a seed of belief that day. Days turned into weeks as the anticipation built. When voting day finally arrived, tension buzzed in the air. Employees filed into the makeshift booth, their faces reflective of hope, uncertainty, and excitement. For Adam, every ballot was a heartbeat and acknowledgement of the dreams that had brought him here. As he stood with the executive board, the room felt heavy with expectation. The chairman cleared her throat and the room fell silent. "And the new president of the company is..." Shock rippled through him like a tidal wave. For a heartbeat, all sound vanished. The janitor everyone had overlooked was now a leader, his journey suddenly real. Applause erupted, echoing off the walls as people rose to their feet. Tears welled in his eyes. It felt surreal, euphoric, and terrifying all at once. The challenges of leadership revealed themselves quickly. Adam found himself navigating meetings that extended into late hours, wrestling with budgets, strategies, and decisions that felt like mountains. The weight pressed down on him, and echoes of "he's just the janitor" haunted him every now and then. But the support from his coworkers anchored him. They believed in him, they had chosen him. At first, the road was rocky. But with each meeting, with each conversation, he learned. He listened to feedback like a sponge, absorbing the concerns that lingered in the corners of the office. Adam fostered a culture where everyone's input was valued, where the broken systems were acknowledged and addressed head-on. As people began to engage, the atmosphere shifted. Innovation bubbled to the surface like a stream breaking free from a frozen lake. Adam created forums for discussion, encouraging everyone to share ideas, and they did. In those sessions, industrial-strength dreams sprouted from small conversations. Then came the moment of truth. The company teetered on the edge of crisis, anticipated layoffs threw a shadow over everything they had built. Anxiety rippled through the office like wildfire, threatening to scorch the relationships he had nurtured. Adam gathered everyone in a tense meeting, ready to face the storm head-on. "Listen," he said, calm yet determined. "We're in this together. Your voices and ideas matter." He felt the connection in the room, a shared understanding that they were united against the tide. Days turned into frantic weeks, and he leaned into collaboration like never before. The team came together, brainstorming solutions that combined their strengths. They prepared a plan robust enough to address the issues they faced. As they worked late into the nights, sharing laughter and worry alike, faith in one another grew. At that moment, something shifted in Adam. He realized that leadership wasn't just about making decisions. It was about cultivating relationships, understanding vulnerabilities, and creating an environment where people felt safe to be their true selves. Slowly, the tide began to turn. They navigated the layoffs, even finding creative solutions that sparked new projects. The spirit of the company began to reemerge, revitalized. Employees started to see a brighter future, and excitement bubbled where there was once fear. As he made his way through the office one morning, Adam found himself standing in the lobby, a familiar space that once felt stifling, now bursting with possibility. In that moment, he reflected on how far he had come. The journey from janitor to president had deepened his understanding of leadership, reminding him that every person mattered, every voice had weight. The laughter and chatter filled the air, a stark contrast to the lonely silence from before. Adam walked with purpose, greeted by smiles and nods. The connections forged during tough times created a bond that everyone cherished. Months passed, and as Adam wrapped up another successful quarter, he found himself thinking about the very first day he signed on to be president. Each challenge, each triumph had shaped him into the leader he had become, a leader who understood the nuances of fear and hope, privilege and responsibility. And so he stood in that same lobby, feeling the echoes of his past memories of sweeping floors and overhearing conversations that ignited dreams. No longer just a janitor, he embodied the belief that transformation is possible. Every relationship he built, every idea he nurtured became a testament to that belief. His story resonated through the company, reminders that everyone could find their voice, that the unlikeliest paths could lead to the most profound change. As he looked around, Adam knew they had become more than co-workers. They were a community, bound together by the belief that anyone could rise from any background. He had become a living example of that truth. In the end, Adam's story transcended the journey from wiping the floor to sitting in the president's chair. It became a symbol of hope, a reminder that transformative leadership lies within all of us, often hidden just beneath the surface, waiting for a moment of light to shine through. And in the hallways of that company, each person held the potential to lead, to inspire, to create change, not as janitors or executives, but as vital, irreplaceable parts of a greater purpose. He was on his hands and knees, wiping the lobby floor when a group of executives flooded in, their laughter echoing sharply against the cold walls. Adam looked up, his mop frozen mid-swipe. For a moment, he tried to make himself invisible, to blend into the tile like a forgotten shadow. The sleek suits, polished shoes, and confident strides felt like a world far removed from his own. Who was he really but the janitor, the man who cleaned the mess left behind? As the group passed, one executive, a tall woman with striking confidence, caught his eye. She threw him a quick nod before continuing her conversation. In that brief moment, Adam felt something twist inside him, recognition, a fleeting glimpse of possibility. Maybe he could be more than just the guy who wiped floors. Perhaps it was time to step into the light. Days turned into weeks. Adam soaked up the conversations that went on around him, drifting through the office as if he were part of the furniture. He listened to whispers of struggle and dissatisfaction among employees, feelings of being undervalued, unheard. It was the same concerns that echoed in his mind. "We need a leader we can trust," a coworker sighed one afternoon. Those words ignited a fire within him. What if he could be that leader? After all, he spent his days interacting with everyone, listening to their hopes and fears. The more he mulled it over, the more it felt like an opportunity blossoming in the quiet corners of his mind. That night, Adam found himself at his kitchen table, surrounded by crumpled papers and half-finished ideas. It was messy, but so was his life, a tangle of aspirations tucked away. He scribbled thoughts about what could be improved, about how communication could change the culture. He envisioned a workplace where every voice mattered, where people felt seen. Then came the announcement that shook everything up. The company was holding elections for new leadership. That spark within Adam transformed into a blazing flame. This was it. He could run. The very thought sent adrenaline coursing through his veins. He signed up, and with each passing day, his confidence grew. He spent evenings brainstorming ideas, creating posters, talking to coworkers about what they wanted to see change. "Together we can create a better place," he would say, feeling the enthusiasm build with each conversation. It wasn't just about him anymore, it was about all of them. On the night before the election, Adam stood in front of a mirror, rehearsing his speech like an actor preparing for a big role. His heart raced. This was more than just a speech. It was a proclamation of hope, a call for change. It was a chance to lay bare the dreams he'd harbored for so long. When voting day finally arrived, the atmosphere buzzed with excitement and anxiety. Employees lined up, some whispering about the choice before them. Adam's heart pounded in rhythm with the clicks of shoes against the floor. He felt the weight of each ballot, each decision. As he stood in front of his colleagues, he could see uncertainty in some eyes, but he pressed on, pouring his heart into his words. "I am here because I believe in all of you," he declared, his voice steady now. "We can create a culture where every single voice is heard. I want to foster trust, ideas, and growth." The applause that erupted felt tentative yet warm. Adam could feel the tide beginning to turn, the energy shifting ever so slightly. As the days passed after the election, tension gripped the office. The votes were counted, and soon they would reveal the next leader. Adam paced the break room, running through endless scenarios in his mind. What if he lost? Would he go back to mopping floors, feeling once again like he didn't matter? Then the day came. Adam stood among the board members, the executives who had walked past him, ignored him for so long. The room felt unbearably tense, every breath heavy with anticipation. The chairperson cleared her throat and announced, "And the new president of the company is..." Time seemed to freeze. For a heartbeat, everything stopped. Then an eruption of applause filled the room, overwhelming him. He felt his skin prickle with disbelief and joy. The janitor, the man who had always been on the sidelines, was now the president. He blinked, struggling to absorb the enormity of it. In that moment, a wave of determination washed over him. He stepped forward into a new world, one filled with both challenges and opportunities. The excitement was quickly met with the stark reality of what it meant to be a leader. Strategy meetings, budgeting, and board discussions flooded his calendar, each day stretching him in ways he never anticipated. The doubt crept back in like an unwelcome visitor. Could he really do this? What did he know about leading a company? But every time insecurity knocked, he remembered his purpose. He wanted to be the voice for the people. That vision guided him through those first few chaotic months. With new responsibilities came new lessons. Adam prioritized listening to others, creating a culture of open dialogue. "I want to hear your ideas, your concerns," he said during team meetings. He encouraged everyone to speak up, fostering an environment where creativity could thrive. Over the months, the atmosphere shifted significantly. Employees who felt like mere cogs in the machine began to share their insights, ideas blossomed, and productivity surged. Adam felt a sense of belonging forming, the unity he had hoped for and worked tirelessly to foster. Then, just as things began to settle, a crisis struck. The company faced a significant financial setback. News of potential layoffs sent shockwaves through the office. Anxiety swept over everyone like a frigid breeze. Adam braced himself, knowing this was a critical moment in his young presidency. Gathering the team together, he felt the weight of their nervousness. "I know that there are uncertainties ahead," he said, trying to steady his own voice. "But we're a team, and I want us to face this together. We need to hear from you." As people began to talk, ideas surfaced that Adam had never even considered. Employees who once felt marginalized shared their insights. Discussions flowed like a river, and gradually they crafted a plan that made sense, a compromise that incorporated everyone's concerns and built on their strengths. Weeks passed and their collaboration paid off. The panic began to dwindle. The team embraced change, finding innovative solutions that ultimately led to saving jobs and restoring stability. Adam felt the warmth of camaraderie grow, a collective spirit blasting away the shadows of uncertainty. As he reflected on the journey, Adam found himself buoyed not just by the successes, but also by the connections forged during hard times. He had transformed from a janitor to president, but the roots of his identity remained true. He still sought to empower others, believing in the dormant potential that lay within everyone. On the day they finally announced the turnaround in the company's fortunes, the celebration reverberated all through the office. Laughter filled the air where worry once took residence. Adam walked the halls, greeted by smiles and pats on the back. Standing in the lobby where it all began, he couldn't help but reminisce. He remembered the countless evenings spent mopping the floors, dreaming about more than what met the eye. Those dreams were now part of a larger narrative, a testament to determination, belief, and the strength found in unity. The office no longer felt intimidating. It was vibrant, dynamic, a true reflection of the people within it. Adam had become not just a figure of authority, but a symbol of hope, proof that change was possible for anyone willing to fight for it. He thought of the executives who had passed him by, oblivious to the potential sitting quietly in the corner. They had underestimated him, but with every decision he made, Adam was rewriting that narrative. The janitor became the president, and with that, he carried the dreams of everyone behind him. In that moment, surrounded by laughter and joy, he realized that leadership was not defined by the title, but by the ability to inspire, to connect, and to lift others. And as the sun set outside the sleek glass doors, Adam felt a surge of gratitude wash over him. The journey had tested him in ways he could have never prepared for, but every challenge had forged him into a catalyst for change. No longer just a janitor, Adam embraced the weight of his role with humility and purpose. The future held boundless opportunities to lead, to inspire, and to remind everyone that together they could rise. The journey had begun on that well-worn lobby floor, but it had unfolded into something profound, their story, their legacy, written in every corner of that office. And so they continued, hand in hand, forging a path towards a future filled with hope, possibility, and the light of collective dreams. He was wiping the lobby floor when everything changed. The dull thud of his mop against the tile echoed through the empty space, but the sound was drowned out by laughter from the corner of the room. Adam looked up to see a group of executives striding in, their tailored suits and polished shoes gleaming under the lobby lights. For a brief moment, he felt a pang of envy. Their confidence seemed to fill the air while he was just the janitor, a man fading into the corners of the building. The weight of that glance pressed down on Adam's chest, making it hard to breathe. He swallowed hard, forcing himself to focus again on the mop in his hands. But that day, something inside him stirred. He remembered the conversations he had overheard employees talking about feeling stuck, about wanting change. What if he could be the one to spark that change? The thought took root deep in his mind. Maybe he could be more than just the man who wiped the floors. Over the next few weeks, the spark grew into a flame. He began to linger longer in the break room, joining conversations and listening intently to the worries of his coworkers. "We need someone in leadership who understands us," he heard someone say. Those words resonated with Adam, fueling his desire to be that leader. He had spent years sweeping up after others, but what if he could help guide them instead? What if he could lift their voices, give them the credit they deserved? The idea electrified him. One evening after an exhausting shift, he sat at his kitchen table with a pen and notepad. Ideas flowed like water as he scratched them down. What if he ran for president? What if he could galvanize people and transform the corporation? It sounded audacious, even foolish, but the more he wrote, the more excited he became. Change was possible, and he was determined to lead the charge. Days turned into weeks, and Adam's resolve solidified. The company announced upcoming elections, and he seized this chance to speak his mind. Each morning, he felt a growing sense of purpose. The night before the election, nerves twisted in his stomach. He practiced his speech in front of a mirror, struggling to keep his voice steady. "This isn't just about me," he whispered, addressing his reflection. When election day arrived, he walked into the conference room, heart pounding like a drum. The room felt electric, charged with a mix of anticipation and skepticism. Employees gathered, whispering to one another, brows furrowed in concern. Adam stepped up to the podium, feeling the weight of their eyes on him. "I know I'm not the typical candidate," he began, his voice shaking slightly, "but I'm asking you to look beyond the uniform. I've spent years cleaning these floors, but more importantly, I've listened." The silence that followed felt heavy, but a few hesitant claps echoed in the room. Encouraged, Adam continued, pouring his heart into each word. He spoke of unity, collaboration, and the necessity of change. As he talked, he saw his coworkers begin to lean in, their expressions shifting from uncertainty to curiosity. After he finished, the applause was minimal but genuine. It filled him with a flicker of hope. He had taken a step beyond the mop and broom and dared to speak his truth. But as the days went by, doubt crept in again. What if they laughed? What if he was just the janitor trying to play a role he didn't belong in? The voting day arrived, the atmosphere electrified with anticipation. Employees filed into the voting booth, some casting glances in Adam's direction. Each ballot felt like a heartbeat. Could he really pull this off? When the votes were finally counted, he stood in the boardroom, surrounded by executives, the same ones who had once walked past him without a second glance. The chairman released the results, and Adam could barely breathe. "The new president of the company is..." Time stood still. The room erupted into applause, a deafening wave of sound that crashed over him. It felt surreal. He blinked, unable to process the gravity of what had just happened. The janitor had become the president. Standing in that room, amidst cheers and celebration, Adam felt a torrent of emotions crash over him. Joy, disbelief, and an overwhelming sense of responsibility merged into one single question: what do I do now? The challenges of his new role soon became clear. Meetings filled his schedule, and he was inundated with reports, budgets, and strategies. Adam felt like a deer caught in headlights, grappling with the realities of corporate leadership. The initial thrill quickly morphed into a daunting weight that threatened to crush him. Could he really do this? But each time the doubts crept in, he remembered the people who believed in him, the people who had supported him in his journey. He leaned into their expectations and reminded himself that he was their representative. With each meeting, he embraced vulnerability, asking questions and requesting feedback. "I want to hear from all of you," he said. As the weeks turned into months, a change began to blossom. Ideas surfaced, collaboration flourished, and a new energy began to pulse through the office. Employees started to engage differently, no longer just cogs in a machine, but contributors to a larger vision. Excitement bubbled in the air, a shared sense of purpose that filled every corner of the building. Yet just when things began to settle, another storm loomed on the horizon. The company faced a financial downturn that threatened to jeopardize all they had built. Whispers of layoffs filled the air like a dark cloud. The weight of anxiety hung heavily over Adam and everyone else in the office. Gathering his team for an emergency meeting, he felt the somber energy wrapping around him. "I know this news is disheartening," he started, trying to remain firm despite the pressure mounting on his shoulders. He invited everyone to share their thoughts and ideas. In those moments, vulnerability transformed into creativity. Employees who once felt discouraged began throwing out suggestions, brainstorming initiatives that could help move the company forward. Adam marveled at the flood of ideas that surged forward, fueled by determination. As they collaborated late into the night, they formed a plan that revived hope. Commitments and projects began to take shape, showing that they could turn the tide even in the face of uncertainty. Each shared laugh and inspiring idea fueled Adam's belief that they could rise above it all. Weeks passed, and as initiatives began to bear fruit, the atmosphere transformed. The panic gradually faded. The team embraced challenges with newfound enthusiasm, together crafting solutions that proved effective. As he reflected on the whirlwind of the previous months, Adam stood in the same lobby where it had all begun. He could still remember the feelings of invisibility, of longing for more. Now he felt a powerful sense of belonging. He was no longer just the man who wiped the floor. He had become a leader, someone who inspired others to step forward and claim their space. Looking around, he saw smiles and greetings shared as employees passed by. The walls that had once felt suffocating were now alive with energy. They had built a vibrant community around shared dreams and aspirations. And as Adam faced the future, he felt more equipped than ever. It wasn't just his journey anymore. It was a collective story woven together by hopes and struggles. Every person in that office had a role in shaping their reality, and Adam was proud to stand alongside them. As the seasons changed, so did the company. They worked tirelessly, not just for profit, but to create a culture that celebrated every single contribution. Recognition wasn't just reserved for the top tiers, it radiated from every corner. Employees thrived, fueled by the belief that their ideas mattered. Finally, the day arrived when they announced their annual results, and a wave of pride swept through the room. Profits had soared, but more importantly, morale was higher than ever. The employees no longer felt like just another number on the balance sheet. They were a family, a community united by purpose. Standing before the gathered crowd, Adam felt an overwhelming surge of gratitude. They had done it together. The journey had transformed him, reshaped his understanding of what leadership truly meant. He looked over the faces of his coworkers, those who had shared their hopes, fears, and dreams with him. Standing there, he didn't see titles or roles. He saw people who had invested in each other's success. And in that moment of reflection, Adam felt the fabric of their story weave around him, a vibrant tapestry reflecting resilience, strength, and love. His path from the lobby floor to the boardroom was more than just a personal success, it was a collective triumph. In the heart of that office, they had created a legacy built on collaboration and shared dreams, proving that anyone, no matter their starting point, could rise. Together, they had forged a future filled with possibility, one that shone brightly like the polished floor Adam once scrubbed. Adam smiled, and as he looked toward tomorrow, he knew they were only getting started. In unity, they would continue to rise, breaking barriers and embracing the beauty of their collaborative journey. The janitor, now president, had become a symbol for everyone, the embodiment of dreams fulfilled, and they would keep fighting for a better tomorrow together. He was wiping the lobby floor when everything changed. Adam knelt there, mop in hand, feeling the cool surface beneath him as he scrubbed away the day's mess. The hum of fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, a reminder of his mundane routine, but today felt different. Today he heard murmurs among the bustling, crowded group of executives, head held high, strode through the lobby, their laughter echoing against the walls. "Looks like we're losing ground again," one of them said, shaking his head. Adam paused for a moment, mop poised midair. Fresh ideas. He couldn't help but eavesdrop, heart racing as the words hung in the air like an electric charge. His thoughts swirled. What if he could offer those ideas? He had spent years working in this building, absorbing the unsaid frustrations of his coworkers, overheard conversations dripping with discontent. As the executives drifted away, Adam returned to his work but couldn't shake the thought. What if he spoke up? What if the janitor became more than what people saw? The flame of possibility flickered within him as he continued mopping, each swipe igniting the embers of ambition that had long been buried. Days passed, and the seed grew into an insatiable hunger for change. Adam began listening more intently, observing the dynamics between departments, the whispers of discontent, the laughter in the break room that sometimes felt forced. "No one truly listens," he heard one technician sigh. Those words stuck with him. What if he could be that someone? A week later, he found himself gathering his thoughts at home, scribbling feverishly on scraps of paper. He jotted down everything, the frustrations of employees, their desire for recognition, their dreams of a better workplace. Each word bled conviction onto the pages, filling him with a sense of purpose. One evening, as he cleaned the lobby, he bumped into a friendly face, Sarah, one of the receptionists. They exchanged pleasantries, but as she leaned against the counter, Adam couldn't hold back. He asked, eyes lighting up with anticipation. She glanced around, lowering her voice. "Honestly, we need someone who can bridge the gap." Her words struck a chord. This was his chance. If he listened and learned, could he make a difference? The idea spiraled into a plan. Adam decided to run for president, to offer a voice to those swept aside. His mind raced with ideas. Together, they could change their trajectory. Motivated, he began putting together a campaign. Early mornings were spent designing posters. Late nights were filled with reaching out to colleagues, and his heart raced each time he mustered the courage to speak up. "Together we can rise." The slogan became his driving force, echoing little by little through the hallways. When the day of the announcement came, everything felt charged with anticipation. Standing in front of the crowd, he felt a rush of adrenaline washed over by a wave of nerves. Colleagues filled the room, their eyes hopeful yet skeptical. Echoed in whispers, taking a deep breath, Adam began. "I know I'm not the norm. I've spent years cleaning this lobby, but I see potential and frustration. I hear your stories." His words flowed from his heart, raw and real. This was more than just a speech, it was a declaration of unity. As he finished, he witnessed a small ripple of applause, a hesitant recognition. The energy in the room shifted, hope flickered like a candle just ignited, but doubt still lingered, gnawing at the edges of his vision. What if he wasn't enough? What if he failed? The days swirled into a blur, filled with campaigning and navigating the complexities of office dynamics. Conversations became richer, ideas started to flow. Soon, it was time for the voting. He stood before the board, surrounded by executives, his heart drumming harder with every tick of the clock. Would they see him as more than the janitor? As the votes were tallied, a hush fell over the room. Time felt suspended. Then, with bated breath, the results were finally announced. The new president of the company is. The sound of silence shattered like glass. His heart raced, pulse thundering in his ears. For a moment, disbelief washed over him. Had he truly done it? Applause erupted, a shaky mixture of excitement and bewilderment as he stood there frozen, trying to process the gravity of the moment. The janitor, once invisible, now standing at the helm. Yet, as he stepped forward to embrace his new title, that exhilarating high quickly morphed into a storm of challenges. Meetings filled his schedule, budgets overwhelmed him, and responsibilities crammed his days. Adam had always led with his heart, but now he felt a wave of doubt crashing down on him. Could he really lead a company? What did he know about making decisions on a corporate level? Days turned to weeks, and he found himself grappling with questions, doubts piling on like snow. Just when he felt rooted, insecurity crept back in. But then he remembered Sarah, the receptionist, and all those who believed in him. "I can do this," he whispered to himself, reminding himself of the vision that drove him. He started to foster open communication, championing dialogue amongst his team. "Your voices matter," he said during meetings, softening his tone. Bit by bit, lines of communication began forming within the walls once shrouded in silence. As spring blossomed, so did the energy of the office. Employees began to collaborate in vibrant new ways, sharing innovative ideas, breaking down barriers. The culture was transforming, every corner echoed with the sound of laughter and creativity. But just as things began to settle, another storm brewed on the horizon. One afternoon, an urgent email interrupted the silent hum of productivity. Adam opened it to find news of a serious financial shortfall. Jaws dropped as murmurs of anxiety rippled through the teams. It was the very crisis he had feared. Would they have to let people go? The thought sent chills down his spine. A wave of overwhelming responsibility crashed over him. Gathering the team was now more critical than ever. He felt the weight of every earnest face looking at him, hope flickering behind their eyes. "We must come together. This is our chance to brainstorm solutions to fight for our future," he encouraged, though fear lurked behind his own voice. They set to work, pooling ideas, strategies, and perspectives that came from every corner of the organization. Adam had never felt more alive, nor had he ever felt more afraid. He sensed the collective energy, the desperation, the hopes, the dreams. Tension hung in the air, palpable as they navigated through sleepless nights and exhausting brainstorms. Could they really pull this off? Days turned into weeks, the deadline looming nearer with every passing moment. Frustration mounted, but so did resilience. An innovative idea emerged from one of the newest staff members, a proposal to leverage their social media presence to attract new contracts. The room fell silent as Adam laid eyes on the hesitant intern. He asked, a flicker of hope igniting in the air. They rallied, dissecting the proposal and piecing together a plan. As adjustments to the plan were made, hope transformed into action. Employees pooled their strengths, believing in each other, striving for success not just for themselves, but for the people beside them. The idea blossomed, rich with potential. One bright morning, Adam stood with his team as they prepared for an exciting campaign launch. The energy was electric, and as their combined efforts began to come together, he felt pride swell in his chest. "It's our time to shine," he declared, voice steady as he looked at faces lit with determination. But as the excitement reached its peak, the reality prickled under the surface. Questions loomed. Was this too ambitious? Were they truly ready? Doubt crept back in, catching him off guard like a whisper on the wind. Could they deliver? And just as they were on the cusp of launching, Adam received a phone call that rattled everything. Unknown to him, there were whispers in the boardroom, rumors spreading like wildfire that questioned his leadership. The grave voice on the other end hinted at uncertainty, and before he even inputted a response, Adam's heart sank. "Listen," the voice said, cool and calculated. "Some are discussing whether or not you're the right fit for this position." Concerns, those words echoed in his mind, a haunting refrain. Adam felt the floor shift beneath him. Just when he thought they were finally moving forward, the threat of losing it all loomed large. He knew he had to act, had to galvanize his team before the old shadows crept back into view. With a deep breath, he summoned his strength, ready to confront the impending storm head-on. "We've come too far to back down now," he rallied, standing before his team with resolve burning in his eyes. "Let's show them what we're made of." As they prepared for the launch, adrenaline coursed through Adam's veins. Success hung in the balance, but so did his future and the dreams of everyone who had stepped forward to support him. The time for action had come, and everything would play out in the minutes, seconds that followed. Little did he know, as they stepped into the unknown, that the decisions made in that pivotal moment would not only alter the company's trajectory, but reshape the very fabric of who they all were. The stakes had never been higher, and as the clock ticked down, Adam knew the truth. This wasn't just a job anymore. It was a battle for something far greater.